The recent blockage of the Strait of Hormuz has once again brought concerns around the power sector back into focus. This narrow but critical choke point handles roughly 20% of global crude oil flows, along with a comparable share of LNG trade. For many economies across Asia, where LNG imports from the Middle East play an important role in electricity generation, this disruption has raised immediate concerns around power supply security and potential price volatility. These concerns have become more visible in recent weeks as several countries in the region, including Thailand, South Korea, and the Philippines, have begun announcing power-saving measures as a precaution against possible supply constraints. Vietnam has also taken similar steps, reflecting a cautious approach to managing potential risks. However, the impact so far has remained limited. LNG-fired power accounts for only around 2% of Vietnam's total installed electricity capacity, meaning that the country's power system is not heavily dependent on LNG in the short term. Increasing uncertainty in global LNG supply and pricing is likely to accelerate the shift toward renewable energy as the country seeks to reduce reliance on imported fuels and enhance long-term energy security. To better understand why Vietnam is relatively insulated, it is important to look at the current positioning of its power system. Over the past decade, Vietnam has undergone a rapid expansion in electricity generation capacity, with total installed capacity more than doubling to approximately 95 gigawatts by 2025. At the same time, the energy mix has become increasingly diversified, combining both conventional and non-fossil sources in a way that enhances overall system resilience. Renewable energy has been one of the main drivers of this transformation. Supported by favorable natural conditions and strong policy incentives, particularly the feed-in tariff mechanism implemented between 2019 and 2021, renewables now account for around 27% of total installed capacity. This places Vietnam ahead of many regional peers that remain more reliant on fossil fuels. Hydropower contributes another 27%, forming a substantial non-fossil foundation for the system. At the same time, conventional sources continue to play a critical role in maintaining system stability. Coal-fired power accounts for around 31% of total capacity and remains the primary baseload source, supported by fuel imports from countries such as Australia and Indonesia. Domestic gas-fired generation contributes roughly 11%, while LNG-based power remains limited at around 2%, following the commissioning of the country's first LNG-fired plant in late 2025. The remaining share is supplemented by electricity imports. This diversified structure has allowed Vietnam to maintain a relatively stable and cost-competitive power supply even amid external uncertainties. It also plays a key role in supporting economic growth, particularly as the country continues to attract investment into energy-intensive sectors such as semiconductors, data centers, and AI-related infrastructure. For these industries, reliable electricity is not just a supporting factor, it is a fundamental requirement. Looking ahead, however, the global environment is reinforcing the need for a more self-sufficient and resilient power system. Vietnam's long-term development strategy is increasingly shifting toward renewable energy, alongside a gradual rebalancing of conventional generation. Under the revised Power Development Plan of the 8th, total installed capacity is expected to expand significantly, reaching between 183 and 263 gigawatts by 2030. The structure of the energy mix will also evolve. Renewable energy is expected to lead capacity expansion, potentially accounting for close to half of total installed capacity. This reflects both Vietnam's strong natural potential for solar and wind power, as well as the government's commitment to scaling up clean energy. Hydropower will remain an important component, although its share is expected to decline to around 16% due to limited remaining development potential. Together, non-fossil sources are projected to form the core of the system, accounting for roughly two-thirds of total capacity. At the same time, conventional sources will gradually play a smaller role. Coal-fired generation is expected to decline to around 14% of total capacity, in line with the government's direction to phase down coal after 2030. Domestic gas-fired power is likely to remain modest, reflecting the gradual depletion of local gas resources. LNG capacity is projected to increase, but primarily as a flexible balancing source rather than a dominant contributor to the system. In addition, nuclear power is being reintroduced into the planning framework as a long-term solution for stable baseload supply. Projects such as Ninh Thuan 1 and 2, with a combined capacity of around 4 to 6.4 gigawatts, are being prepared for implementation, with commissioning targeted in the 2030 to 2035 period. While still at an early stage, this reflects a strategic shift towards strengthening long-term power supply security through more stable and domestically controlled energy sources. To support this transition, the government is implementing a more coordinated policy framework aimed at scaling renewable energy while addressing structural constraints within the power system. One of the key developments is the introduction of a new renewable pricing mechanism in 2025, replacing the previous feed-in tariff regime. This new framework provides more predictable returns and helps restore investment visibility, which is essential after a period of slowdown when investors were waiting for clearer guidance. At the same time, the government is taking steps to address long-standing issues with renewable energy projects developed under the feed-in tariff regime. 173 projects faced regulatory challenges related to construction approvals and eligibility for feed-in tariff pricing, leading to prolonged negotiations between investors and authorities. Recent proposals aim to resolve these issues by applying feed-in tariff pricing from the point of regulatory compliance while using transitional pricing for earlier periods. Although discussions are still ongoing, these efforts are expected to gradually restore investor confidence and create a more stable foundation for future development. Beyond generation, system flexibility is becoming increasingly important. The rapid expansion of solar and wind capacity introduces greater variability in power output, which places additional pressure on grid stability. To address this, battery energy storage systems are being prioritized as a key component of the system. Initial pricing guidelines have been introduced, and pilot projects are already being developed to support deployment in the coming years. Transmission infrastructure is another critical focus area. Renewable energy resources are concentrated in the central and southern regions, while industrial demand remains strongest in the north. Strengthening inter-regional connectivity is therefore essential to ensure efficient power allocation. Under the current plan, substantial investment is being directed toward upgrading the transmission network, with early progress already visible in key projects that have helped alleviate bottlenecks during peak demand periods. In parallel, market-based mechanisms are being introduced to improve demand-supply matching. The Direct Power Purchase Agreement framework allows large electricity consumers to contract directly with renewable producers, improving efficiency and supporting the growth of clean energy. Rooftop solar is also gaining renewed support as a decentralized solution, enabling on-site generation and reducing pressure on the grid. Overall, while recent global developments have highlighted vulnerabilities in energy supply chains, Vietnam's power sector remains relatively resilient in the short term. More importantly, these external shocks are accelerating an ongoing structural transition, one that is shifting the system toward greater reliance on renewable and domestic sources. In doing so, Vietnam is strengthening its long-term power supply security while maintaining a stable and competitive electricity system to support sustained economic growth.